playing in the park.
So we're going to try to avoid talking about politics here today.
But DesMoinesRegister.com, well, that's...
I'm Jan Mickelson, and we're in the middle of a conversation about the caucuses and the political season. We've had a couple of, well, we've had one presidential candidate. We had good intentions, though. We have a bunch more. We've had a couple of pundits, and now we have the heaviest hitter of the Iowa political pundit corps, David Yepsen, here in the studio with us. And thank you. Welcome aboard, sir.
Thanks for having me, Jan.
Now, it's a virtual toss-up, both political parties.
That's correct.
So in the margin of error for anybody here at the top tier of both parties. Has that happened before in your political memory?
No, I don't think, certainly, no, not in recent times. I mean, there's always been sort of a clear front runner or two, but this thing is, as you said, a statistical tie.
Hillary's claiming to be ahead in one poll. Obama's is claiming to be ahead in the other. What do you figure is more accurate?
Well, actually, the latest poll I saw showed them at a dead even tie.
Really?
29-29. So
no.
This is going to be a fun caucus night, Jan. We're actually going to go into one election not knowing the outcome. We have to listen to the voters.
That sucks. That's BO, by the way, before Oprah.
That's true.
And
before a lot of bills. So,
yes, and I'm thinking that well, I'm going to just ask you, to what degree do you think Oprah's presence will put her incredible thumbs on the scale, political scale here in Iowa?
I think it will help. I think these celebrity endorsements, what they do is they help generate a crowd, and they generate a lot of media attention for the candidate. So, nobody says, well, I'm going to be for Barack Obama because Oprah Winfrey is for Barack Obama. But she does bring them to Obama's table where Obama can then have a chance to close the sale. And you get these huge crowds. This is a game of collecting names of people who you can generate to go out to a caucus. So if Oprah Winfrey comes to town and a lot of people show up, the candidate is able to get their names, their address, their phone number, and then hopefully turn them out on caucus nights. But I certainly think that's an important cohort of the electorate that they're going after. It's a battle for women in the Democratic Party. Our poll shows that 63% of the caucus goers will be women.
What is the history of the caucus, and how does it differ, David Yepsen, between the two?
Caucus is a meeting. A caucus is a neighborhood meeting. In fact, Jan, the origin of the word is thought to be an Algonquin Native American term that means a meeting of tribal leaders. And we've always had caucuses in Iowa. With only
and tribal leaders.
Yeah. And basically the political activists in each party would get together in someone's home and conduct party business. They were very small affairs. In 1968, the Democratic Party went through a tumultuous convention in Chicago. The party wanted to open itself up. They rewrote the rules. And in one of the things they thought about opening the party up was to start events earlier and put some time in between them so people could go to meetings and submit platform resolutions. And in Iowa, the Democrats figured, well, we'll have the one that starts earliest and earlier than anyone else. And so for the first time, you had delegates to the Democratic National Convention that selection process began in Iowa. So that gave it some importance. And in 1972, George McGovern, when he was running for the Democratic presidential nomination, and his campaign manager, a guy named Gary Hart, said, gee, what can we do to get a little bump going into the New Hampshire primary? They said, well, we can go out to Iowa and try to shake things up a little bit. They came here, campaigned heavily. There was about a dozen reporters who showed up, only a dozen, and they came in a close second to Ed Muskie. After McGovern won the nomination, people looked back and said, that Iowa result told us something. That lesson was not lost on a guy named Jimmy Carter and Hamilton Jordan down in Georgia, and they copied that model and really elevated it and went all the way to the White House by winning in Iowa. And that's
people have been trying to emulate that ever since, and to get a jump on the system the last couple of election cycles.
He wrote the template for it. Other states, their solution to trying to take some of the influence away from Iowa and New Hampshire has been to move up their states' contests earlier in the calendar, which has had the unintended consequence of only making Iowa and New Hampshire more important, because a candidate who does poorly in Iowa has no time to recover. And the flip side is a candidate who does well here can really light a rocket and go all the way to the nomination, which John Kerry did. The difference between a caucus and a primary, though, a primary is an election that goes on all day. Polls open at 7, close at 8 or 9. Whereas a caucus is a meeting that starts at 6:30. They close. Everybody shows up
during Orange Bowl.
Close the the doors at 7 and they vote. So that's one of the criticisms, Jan, that's made of the process. That some people that have to work maybe can't participate. There's no absentee ballots. But it's a neighborhood meeting. It's a party meeting. On the Democratic side, they do something called electing delegates, delegate equivalents, and so the party rules require, in order to eliminate minor candidates, they require a candidate to have 15% of the total number of people who show up at a caucus in order to qualify for any delegates. So if a candidate doesn't have 15% of the total, his or her people have to go with a campaign that does. And so that's why it becomes important what the second choices are of people who support second-tier candidates. On the Democratic side, Iowa and New Hampshire in the mid-1980s cut a deal. And that was that New Hampshire would have a primary, but Iowa would continue with the caucus. There's a difference between a caucus and a primary, as we've been discussing. And so the Iowa Democrats have always felt that a neighborhood meeting is the way they want to go in order to keep faith with New Hampshire. If you had Iowa turn into a primary to meet the objections that Lisa has, then that would run afoul with New Hampshire and you'd have a big fight with them. So, and both parties also like caucuses because they're a party-building operation. It enables both parties to find out in every neighborhood who the activists are, and then those people can be organized, they can be hit up for money, they can knock on doors for the party in the fall campaign. So that's why the difference is.